What's up, guys and gals of the Movement World? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again for Football Beyond the Stats and our Movement Play of the Week. This week for week 3 of the 2022 National Football League season. And today we have a bit of a treat because we're going to watch Saquon Barkley in all of his glory, who he has become at this point in 2022. Someone that obviously I've dove into the movement skill of as deep as I have anyone of the 1,696 players that are playing in today's National Football League. And what we're going to see today is really Saquon, I don't want to say 2.0 because I don't know exactly where he is right now and how he's really truly seeing the world and how he's making decisions and truly solving problems in an adaptable fashion. However, we are going to get a glimpse of it and be able to speculate. So I want to do things a little differently today. I want to jump right into the video. I want to watch them in their entirety at every angle that we have here from our friends over at Highlight Heaven. So without further ado, we're going to see the play 100% speed, 36-yard touchdown from Saquon Barkley in an outside zone here, third quarter, 5:36 left in the third quarter of this Monday Night Football matchup between the Giants and the Cowboys. And I mentioned yesterday on Twitter, and you see this gal, she's just enjoying her White Claw there. She watched Saquon Barkley do his thing. The Giants fans in their whiteout behind this, or besides this Dallas Cowboys fan there, all celebrating. Obviously, it has a Penn State Saquon Barkley 2016 or 17, maybe 18 Penn State feel to it, whiteout feel here at MetLife Stadium, East Rutherford, New Jersey, the New York Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys. Let's watch it one more time all the way through and see what it is that you guys are picking up. I hope that you're starting to connect the dots in similar fashions. Is that what I am, but also from your own perspective, your own point of view, and the Giants haven't had something like this to cheer about in quite some time. It's been 5 years now since Saquon Barkley came on to his rookie campaign and put up the 2,000 all-purpose yards. So it's been a minute, not only for Giant fans, but obviously for 26 and Saquon Barkley. The great thing about this, as I mentioned back in the spring when I did my movement skill deep dive on Saquon and what it is that I think he could still improve upon, what it is that he could do to refine his movement skill, there is still a lot of meat on the bone for Saquon Barkley here, guys and gals. But there are some things that I want to point out today and give credit where credit is due. And that's going to be the biggest thing for me today, that I want to look at who Saquon is on this respective play, how he solved these local problems by local problems, and what it might be able to tell us about where his movement skill really is at this moment. Of course, let's remember first and foremost that just 2 years ago, at this time 2 years ago, he was already sidelined. He was sidelined in 2020 at Soldier Field in week 2 of the National Football League season against the Chicago Bears with the torn ACL. Obviously had some other things damaged within his knee as well. And last year, as I mentioned in the video in the spring, he just wasn't really ever able to trust himself and to feel comfortable doing what it is that he likes to do on a football field. But now, as you could tell when he was running into the end zone, he has his style back. And when I say back, I still think there's some major things that he could refine. But as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, if you follow me on Twitter, I did a little thread about where his movement skill was going, what it is that I saw from him in week 1, and what it is that I think we might be seeing more of, because I actually see him proactively growing and evolving within his movement skill and craft. And I'm going to point out a few of those things here today. Things that I mentioned in the spring that I felt as though he really hadn't ever done, that he might be doing a little bit more of, or maybe I'm just overly optimistic in thinking that he's doing so, because I still believe that Saquon Barkley, if he becomes that next version of himself, can be the most skillful, most dexterous mover playing in the National Football League today. Now, he's not there yet. He's not there right now. There are still some things that he needs to do, some gaps that he needs to fill, but let's look into who he is right now. So let me get to our 50% speed. We're going to look at this outside zone. Giants, again, tie game against their division rival, the Dallas Cowboys. It was a pretty heated game. East Rutherford, MetLife Stadium. That surface, ugh, we saw it last night with Sterling Shepard in the fourth quarter. Not even something that obviously was really MetLife's issue, but we have seen a host of injuries at Giants Stadium, or the Jets Stadium too, for that matter, because obviously the Jets and the Giants share this stadium. But obviously, we want to think about what that surface may or may not afford the athletes. Okay, there's definitely a different foot ability, foot surface interaction, a plant ability, if you, not a foot ability, a foot and surface interaction, and a different plant ability from the feet, and obviously then a different connection. But the surface is improving the way that it seems over the last number of years, and obviously they do play a lot of games on it. Anyways, I digress. Let's look at this play. We're going to watch it. We're going to be able to see more from the end zone view, of course, particularly in the Monday Night Football viewpoint. But we can see right off the bat here. Let's see, is that 97 and 64? So there's probably a little bit too much penetration. And when I say probably, there is too much penetration here with 97 and 64. But before we even really get going on the play, we're seeing higher perceptual sensitivity and attunement from 26 Saquon Barkley. In the past, in these situations, he would have done one of two things from that, which what I saw him, particularly last year, where degrees of freedom are fixed and frozen. He's not actually able to pick up the information in the world all that accurately or sensitively, and therefore he would act in an inadept way. He might make a cutting action too quickly. He might fix and freeze his motor action at system degrees of freedom, leading to some hesitancy. Or he might have actually, and this happened actually quite a bit last year, ran right into the back of his offensive lineman. So here, right off the bat, we're seeing enhanced sensitivity and attunement from Saquon Barkley. This yard and a half away from his offensive guard. This is key specifying information sources. The back of your offensive lineman is highly informative to what is happening within the local movement problem in front of you and how you may need to coordinate and regulate your own movement actions. So right now, a different Saquon Barkley right off the bat, okay? And let's not forget, we perceive to act, we act to perceive. So after he perceives this information about interpersonal distance between he and his teammate, and of course, I got to get out the telestrator, right? So we see him connecting to postural information as well. So he's combining these two information sources, distance, interpersonal distance between he and the offensive tackle, and then posture and kinematics of his offensive tackle, which are both serving to inform him, where do I need to cut? When do I need to cut? And then it's up to his movement system to determine, how do I need to cut? And that how that he needs to cut is obviously this extreme elongated lunge cut that he actually ends up organizing. Again, a newness from Saquon Barkley, okay? So what we want, remember, Bruce Lee, to use no way is the way. And of course, abundance precedes adaptability, or degeneracy precedes dexterity. So we must not only have using no way as the way, we must have a lot of ways, and we must also possess, at least if we're going to reach the highest levels of skill, adjustability or adaptability of both the coordinative movement solutions, that would be the strategy itself, could be a crossover in this situation, kind of this hybrid between this lunge crossover cut. It could be more of a wider base of support power cut. Those are two different coordination strategies. When an athlete is moving up in levels of skill, or dexterity, the ability to solve any emerging movement problem in and across situations. They must possess more ways of solving the similar behaving but different movement problems. Okay. So Saquon Barkley right here, right now, more adjustability already we're seeing off the bat in week 3 or through week 3 of the National Football League season. Okay. Much less hesitation in some of these actions. Now, I'm going to call out a guy that I've partnered with for a long period of time, no longer do at this moment in time, but did almost the entire time that he was here in Minnesota. Number 42 here, Anthony Barr, outside linebacker now for the Dallas Cowboys. AB's got to make this play, okay? He's a free defender, unblocked, running at whatever speed he needs to down the line of scrimmage. Anthony's got to make that play in the open field. Okay. He has Saquon Barkley dead to rights, and this whole play could have been eliminated for a 0 or 1 yard gain. But instead, it's not a two-way, it is a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. And it's not up to Anthony only to make that play. It's also up to Saquon to make him miss. This is where I think Saquon still has to do a better job, even though here the solution ends up being functional. What do I mean by functional? It's practical, it's useful, it's relevant, it solves the problem. Okay. Not necessarily optimal. Okay. But it's functional. It serves its purpose. But AB, number 42, got to make this play. Okay. He's a little high right now. His eyes, and this is something that I will call Anthony out for, his eyes have a tendency to drift at times as opposed to connect to key specifying information sources that he can utilize and connect to couple his movement behaviors in relation to. So this is something I've seen from him in our times working together over the years here in Minnesota, but he's coming in a little high, and then that relates to him in his hands just slipping around the waist of one Saquon Barkley, who didn't have to do a bunch. Now it's still up to Saquon to coordinate, control, and organize a movement solution that is functional, right? There is no need to have a more optimal movement solution necessarily if the movement solution one organizes ends up being functional. And here it is. Now, I'm going to be completely transparent. I'm not sure Saquon actually even sees Anthony, okay? So in these situations are times that if Saquon and I were working together, I would attempt to educate his attention so he would be awfully attuned and sensitive to whether he actually gives a proactive glance there. Now, that probably is a little unrealistic here because on this outside zone play, he's dealing with a bunch of different information sources. But the free defender, guys and gals, represents a major specifying source of information. Okay. This is the most threatening or challenging obstacle that one must deal with as a running back. 11v11, and you have the free defender. That is your guy to make miss. Now, Saquon does that here. So I'm not trying to belittle or discredit him because he still solves the problem. But I think he might have stumbled into this solving of the problem as opposed to actually picking up any information sources from Anthony and changing something about his behavior. Saquon changing something about his behavior. Now, I could be completely off base because we don't have a visual tracking on him. We don't have eye tracking glasses on him. I don't know if he actually looked at Anthony or if out of his periphery, which is where I would want it to be, that he would be looking ahead, but still widening his perceptual sensitivity and awareness. So over here, he would be able to pick up Anthony and where he's coming, when he's coming, and how fast he's coming, and then use it to organize his own movement behaviors. Hopefully that makes some sense. Okay. But lo and behold, Anthony has a poor attempt at this respective tackle attempt at bringing Saquon down. Saquon obviously twists his body, and this is where, again, we see some adaptability from Saquon. So I want to give credit where credit's due. I don't want to take too many liberties, but also watch when he starts to feel Anthony's pressure on his waist here. You can see this slight shift of the hips and his hand goes with him. You can kind of see how I'm doing that little shimmy on screen. And that's what Saquon does to shed Anthony even further. So even though it was a poorly executed tackle attempt from Anthony, I will admit that, Saquon does just enough to adapt to shed him and ensure that he can go from that local movement problem into dealing with the next. The next thing about Saquon that obviously I was highly critical of is when he's dealing with one local movement problem in front of him, he isn't attending to that which what is happening next, which would be a successive or nested affordance, depending on what terminology you want to use there. It's basically one movement problem to the next, to the next, to the next. But we're never dealing, or we shouldn't be, if we're highly skillful, we shouldn't be dealing with just one. We want to essentially be juggling those simultaneously, okay? And they will have or present various opportunities to act, i.e., or AKA affordances. Okay. So now Saquon here seems to actually be dealing with a little bit more of these subsequent successive affordances. Okay. Because as soon as he sheds Anthony, why can I speculate this? Because as soon as he sheds Anthony, or while he's shedding Anthony, we can see where his head is at, and he starts preparing himself to be able to cut from right to left to come back to the inside here. Okay. So he is in more of this state of adaptability within adaptability again, or I will speculate. Okay. But at this moment, as he does so, let's remember at any moment in time, there are simultaneous affordances as well. Okay. Obviously, the highest technique is to have no technique. My technique is the result of your technique. My movement is the result of your movement, right? The late and great Bruce Lee. But the most skillful movers, particularly at the running back position, keep their options open and move in a way that it's accordance to the way that the problem is behaving or unfolding. But again, at any moment in time, there is a rich landscape of affordances that are deep, rich, and meaningful, that are beckoning the player to come to their own, to come and accept it in their own unique and special way. So here, Saquon could have, and maybe one could say potentially should have, gone to his right. Okay. But that's really easy to say when we're watching it with a clicker, frame by frame, slow motion. Very easy to say. This shit is happening fast, guys and gals. Like, unless you've been on the field level and watching it unfold, you can't really even fathom how quickly players are moving. So I said earlier that he maybe could have or should have. It's mostly could have, okay? Because it really, remember, affordances are individual and frame dependent. So it matters on who is watching it, who is the observer. Saquon Barkley, he's the one perceiving and acting. When does he pick up that opportunity or affordance? And what affordance is he accepting or rejecting, for that matter, will be highly authentic and individualized. So being that we have two defenders here too, and let me see if I can get something so we can actually see this. So we got these two defenders behaving in this fashion, who potentially do have an opportunity to go more in the direction to Saquon's right, and they both sort of have to stop their feet, get walled off here by this offensive lineman. Obviously, Saquon makes what is then a functional decision. He solves that immediate local movement problem in a way that is functional and purposeful. Okay. So I don't want to take anything away from that. And then let's look at the adaptability and adjustability of this respective nice little nifty jump cut, not only in relation to these two defenders, 6 and I think it's 26, but also then his own offensive lineman right here, right? So he has this nice, nifty little sweet sidestepping action, and it is a jump cut, but it's not a traditional jump cut in a Saquon Barkley type of fashion. Typical Saquon Barkley is a little wider and a little lower, with his feet in more of a parallel position for him to go from left to right or right to left, right? Left to right, right to left, right. I should say correct there. Left to right or right to left, correct. Um, and here, what we find is this is all coupled in close relation. Let's look at it frame by frame. We can see where his eyes are at. It's right down at not his offensive lineman, but at this respective defender who is lowering his level, closing space. So Saquon here, sensitive and attuned to body posture and kinematics of an opponent, just as he was to his teammate earlier. He is also then adapting his actions accordingly. How do we see him doing that? Not only with the cut itself, but look at where his hand is. His hand is out there at a feeler to keep that defender at arm's length for him to move and execute that cut in a more stylistic, fluid fashion. Okay. New or novel, or at least let's call it refined adjustability or adaptability here from Saquon Barkley. Kudos to him for doing exactly that. And even though you're going to see him hit the gas pedal in a moment, because that's still ultimately what Saquon Barkley loves to do, that adjustable action. Now, no one is going to write home to mom about this, about its biomechanics. But guys and gals, remember, dexterity doesn't live in the biomechanics. Dexterity is not about the movement actions themselves, but it's how those movement actions interact in an adaptable, functional way with a changing environment and its alive problems. Okay. Sort of inspired by Nikolai Bernstein there to a certain degree. It's not about the biomechanics. Were the biomechanics coordinated, controlled, and organized in a way that fits the freaking problem? That's what we're talking about here, and that's what dexterity is about. So you're not, like I said, no one's writing home to mom about his biomechanics there on that cut. Wasn't a textbook cut per se from a biomechanics junkie or the deceleration and change of direction experts that I see out there talking and bragging about how deceleration forms this basis. Deceleration is a part of it, but it's deceleration and change of direction in context. And in context, biomechanics are going to just be the byproduct of perceptions and decisions. Okay. And those are all intertwined and interwoven. Those degrees of freedom are all perpetually feeding into one another. This cut happens, guys, and newness, refinement from Saquon Barkley yet again. In the open field, even though the dude wants to hit the gas pedal, let's not forget, world class for football, acceleration, particularly at the running back position. And he's into that gas pedal in a hiccup again. And when we talk about, or people talk about Saquon Barkley being back, okay, I don't really like this idea of back, because really any player, whether it's one returning from injury ultimately, or whether it's just a player year by year by year, should be on this constant process of refinement, should be on this constant process of adaptation or readaptation, reorganizing degrees of freedom based on who they currently are. So I don't like thinking about him being back per se, but it's about him being able to do that which what he sees within the world, and to act without hesitation when the opportunity presents itself. And Saquon, his movement skill set, ultimately at the end of the day, no matter how attuned and adaptable I'd like to see him, it's still about him hitting that gas pedal. Okay. And he's looking to get an edge, looking to get a corner at every opportunity he can. Cool. Like, that's who he is. The creating individual is more important than any style or system or any solution that's some movement skill education person or sport movement specialist from afar, whatever, tell somebody from afar what they should be doing. So that's Saquon's creating authentic touch. That's his honest touch. He wants to get in the gas pedal. He wants to get to the sideline. We can see here that when he comes out of this cut, he, again, landscape of affordances, guys and gals. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. There's nobody down this lane, and we're going to see it from the other view. But what Saquon's authentic way of viewing the world, he wants to get to open space. He wants to get to the sideline and he wants to use and display his world-class gas pedal in order to do it. Okay. So ultimately, those affordances, those opportunities to act are always going to be stronger invitations for him. Almost always. Okay. Unless he were to start to experience this more within the training environment throughout the course of the year and he were to start accepting new ways of acting. Okay. That's the way that he would change his behavior. But all that being said, again, guys, Saquon, there's nobody here. Okay? Ultimately, he's going to end up in the end zone. I get it. So he's going to get to do his dance. He's going to get to celebrate accordingly, and rightfully he should. He's had a long journey to get to this point, and scoring touchdowns in the National Football League, especially in a highlight type of fashion, it's still the movement play of the week. But definitely some affordances that he is either A, missing, or B, simply outwardly rejecting, that at some point during the course of the NFL season could be affordances that are more inviting or should be more inviting or would relate to the most functional way of solving the problem. Hopefully that makes some sense. But in any event, he solves the problem in his own unique way. But here's something different from Saquon Barkley, guys and gals. In the open field, he now, over these first 3 weeks of the season, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due, he is picking up information about the behaviors of opponents. And this may seem intuitively obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many players look for space, and that space is what offers the opportunity. But what we want to do is go from space to opponent to teammate, space to opponent to teammate, and juggle these information sources essentially, right? They're all working in an intertwined, interwoven fashion, and it's all this information space. All of that information space together, the more skillful movers, the more skillful perceivers and actors are widening that perception, getting the refined perception deeper, longer, more resolute at times. And this is what I've actually seen from Saquon. Now, if this is happening proactively or if it's happening as a byproduct of him getting more exposure to some of these problems, again, I don't know the answer to that question. Okay. But it is improved. Look at him look now over his right shoulder. Boom. Not happened very often before in the past. And hence the reason I am going to harp on this. This is fantastic from Saquon. Get an updated online in the moment update of what's out there and what's threatening, what are opportunities, how should you act. Kudos to Saquon Barkley for that, because in the open field in the past, he would often get fixated on one thing. Here's the space, or here is the opponent. But guys and gals, in complex movement problems with numerous interacting component parts with a landscape of rich affordances, it isn't as simple as if this, then that. Go find one information source. It's an and or type of thing, meaning we want to be going through and finding all of those as information sources. Okay. Not finding them, not only searching for them, but connecting to them and using them to coordinate, control, and guide our movement actions. Okay. Let's watch it from this other view. I'll keep it at slow motion. I think ESPN itself is going to do some things in slow motion here as well, as we can see from the pause. We're going to pick up hopefully many of the things that we mentioned in the first video, the first clip, not first video, the first clip. Hopefully you see some things that I pointed out. And on the other view, let me find it here. Apologize for that. I should have my timestamps, but I do not. I am horrible on the pause and play right now. Let's get to the place. They're going to show how this is a synergy. Okay. Remember, to become one with, you're trying to become one with every movement problem in front of you, but it isn't a 1v11 movement problem, right? Now, the offensive line for the New York Giants has gotten plenty of discredit at times because of their inadequacies. But here, this is blocked fantastically. Yes, number is it 64 or 54, one of the two. Right here in front of him. You can see that like he's getting beat. He's allowing too much penetration. But Saquon's adaptability now, his refined adaptability makes good on it. Okay. It's not about having things blocked perfectly. It's about having things blocked functionally and having a player who can work in this synergistic fashion, shared affordances, guys and gals, with their teammates and with what their teammate and how their teammate is acting. Again, I mentioned this. This is a truly missed tackle. Yes, it was forced to a certain degree because it's never a one-way street. Remember, it's a mutual reciprocal exchange, but AB's got to make that tackle. One of the cool things that we see here that I pointed out earlier is as Saquon twists and shimmies and sheds Anthony, you look at him preparing already for his cut. Okay. Notice I mentioned he could have gone right there. He certainly could have gone right, but if we look at the positions from these two Dallas Cowboys, he probably ultimately did make the right decision. Okay. At least it was the right decision for him at that moment based on where his feet were, what speed he was moving at, what the interpersonal distances were. But we can see him preparing for this cut and he executes this jump cut then. Really sweet, nifty slice. And then in the open field, look at the shoulder, head looking over the shoulder on repeat. Boom. Different Saquon Barkley. Not the best version of Saquon Barkley just yet, but a different Saquon Barkley, a refined Saquon Barkley, a better version, no doubt. We can see it right here. Look at him. He's not getting fixated, guys and gals. And I cannot harp on this part too much, especially if we rewind back to April or May, whenever it is that I put together the movement skill deep dive on Saquon Barkley and what I would work with him if he and I were to ever partner together. This is one of those things. Typically, he gets fixated on one information source. I can't harp on this enough, but here he's dealing and scanning and searching and juggling information sources. Boom, look to the defender, look for the next defender, look for the space, look for the next defender. We can see it, point, period, blank right there. And Saquon, do your touchdown dance just like it's Penn State circa 2017 or 18, whatever year that whiteout game happened. I want to say it was 17. Let's see. I think there's still a lot possible for Saquon Barkley. Even though we're seeing some great stuff, we're seeing some progression, and I say progression very loosely there. I don't like that word. We're seeing some evolution within his movement behaviors and the nuances of them. The great things for Saquon Barkley, for Giants fans and National Football League fans, for a sport movement skill specialist who loves to analyze and dive into the dexterous movement of the game's best players, is there is still more meat on the bone, particularly in his ability to solve multiple movement problems, solve a problem in front of him based on him dealing with what's happening behind it or outside of that immediate local movement problem. We're still seeing some things on the plays where he's failing or not succeeding, where he's missing some opportunities and affordances to act. But plays like this 36-yard touchdown that obviously puts the Giants up, even though they ultimately lost, are really, really encouraging when we think about what Saquon Barkley could potentially be, who it is that he has the potential of being, and where he is right now and where it is that he could go. So hats off to Saquon for some of the growth, some of the evolution that we were able to see or that I was able to see. Hopefully you guys were able to pick it up as well. As usual, if you guys have thoughts, questions, ideas, concerns, things you saw differently than me, by all means, send me a message or put it down here in the YouTube comments below. If you like this video, give me the thumbs up, hit like, forward it, retweet it, do your thing with it. I would certainly appreciate it. So for Sean Mishka, Football Beyond the Stats, movement play of the week for week 3, 2022 National Football League season. This week is a wrap. I'll talk to you guys again next week.